There we go. I want to start with easy questions.
Yes, let's go.
Um, so, what is work?
That's an easy question. Um, there is an idea that's been popularized that when a man wants to achieve something that he cannot do alone, then he needs cooperation from others.
Mm-hmm.
And to get that cooperation, coercion is necessary in some situations. So when coercion is not necessary, we call it play. And when coercion is necessary, we call it work.
Conversation between people.
Coercion,
Coercion.
force. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
If I need to force you to do it,
Yeah.
then it's work. If you do it because it's a play,
Okay.
then that will be for your own pleasure and freely on your own sovereignty, then that will be play.
So, work is coercion in some sense.
It's inherent, coercion. And
The word kawai comes from Hippanium,
yeah,
which is torture.
exactly.
Okay. Okay. And can someone do work on their own? Because by this logic, you can only work by being coerced by someone else. Can you be independent and work, or is this like, I don't know, if you're climbing a tree to get some fruit,
Yeah.
is that work being done?
Yes. Now we are playing on words. There's another definition of work, which was not the first meaning I'm thinking about, and most of us are thinking about when we say what is work.
Yeah.
But if you want to be a very good mountain climber or ping pong player, you will work on your right hand and you will work your left hand and spin it, right? Because you can freely have this activity to improve yourself. And indeed, we use the word work in a different sense. Because here I am in a kind of self-coercion, I'm forcing myself. But given that I am doing it upon myself, is it really coercion? I'm not sure. I'm not really for, right?
Right.
So it's I think it's just the word work has a double meaning, and so we just need to clarify which meaning we want to talk about.
Clear. And we could argue that there is some amount of self coercion because you're doing it not purely out of free will. It could be by conditioning, it could be
Yeah,
coercion by societal pressure or whatever. So you think that
makeup, diet,
yeah,
buying clothes,
yeah.
shopping.
Okay. So what one does of free will is play. Let's stick with this definition. And what one is coerced to do, including coerced by themselves or by unknown forces, is what? Um, and then maybe you can tell me what you think is the purpose or value, right? And then we can double click on how do we define value? Like, what do you think is value or has value?
Um, well, value is something that I will subjectively define, right? So I see value in things.
Mhm.
So it's like beauty, beauty in the eye, as we say, beauty in the eye of the observer. So value is what will attract my interest, right? I will find it valuable because I will have a emotional bond, feel the need of I will feel the need of looking at something or trying to capture it or keep it close to me.
Mm. And what's the value of work? Value in work? And then again, is it being created for the person working? So by definition, it is then being created for the person that is coercing you.
There is a lot of value or purpose in having this forceful coercion activities, right? Uh, you can start from your worldview, right? Your religion. Why are we on this planet? there's this other guy who suffered 2,000 years ago around me, and now I need to suffer as well, to pay for my sin or whatever. So I may have been educated in developing a worldview where I think that suffering, being part of life, is something important that I need to practice. And as such, work is very important because it's a way for me to end up in heaven, right? Earn my parachute.
There's a book called 5,000 Years of Debt,
Yes.
and it talks about the primordial debt which you're born with, and that you're born into life to pay back a debt, sort of redemption.
Exactly. So there is a worldview that drives people to think that it is necessary to suffer, and therefore it is necessary to work, and that helps them fulfill themselves. We say, okay, I know why I am on this planet and what is my life mission. There are other people who might or might not see the world this way, but who see the opportunity to exploit the first category by telling them, yeah, you're right, you should suffer. It's a good thing. Go ahead, do the work, and I will harvest the fruits, by the way, because that's not necessarily what you're looking for.
Yes, and there's also probably people in between who are being exploited and who are also exploiting from one, right?
Yeah.
Part of the narrative in the story. But there is some value in this finding meaning or my purpose of being here that you said that people actually do find in work. They do find through work, through a profession, through work, something that as you were talking about earlier, something that's within them that needs to come out. Some meaning or some purpose.
Okay, there is a fraction of people who find the meaning in the work, meaning who find the meaning in the fact that someone is telling them what to do. But we should not neglect the big chunk of people who find the meaning in the achievement of their work. Right? Most of people also working on, I don't know, building a spaceship.
Yeah.
Find the meaning in the achievement of sending their car in space or space, not from the fact that they have a boss telling them
Yeah.
to do it. So
How do you define the value of sending a car into a spaceship also? And so intrinsic value there. But then
it does not attract my attention.
But then, could you then argue that people who do find intrinsic value in their work are indeed finding play within their work? They are trapped, let's say, when they are being coerced into working, and then yet they manage to find some sort of a space within the work to find play within that space.
Yes, I think there is a lot of people who are within a big corporate who know they have to obey some set of rules, and but who see those rules like the rule of a game.
Yeah.
And who think they are playing a game.
Yes.
It's both good for them because we see them as on their free will, even though they are within the fixed boundary of their job.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, it's kind of worrying me for the lack of consciousness they might put in what they achieve, in what they do. Because, if you play a game of a board game, then at the end of the game, it's all over and you can start over. But when it's real life game and you're burning all the oil in this planet,
Yeah.
you can only do it once.
Yeah.
So it's also quite a worry for me, a concern that people are enjoying their work without placing too much consciousness about the external impacts.
Yeah, but then also you have more and more people seeking work that resonates with them more.
Yeah.
I know people who were working in data science before in fintech, and they felt that their skills are not most useful in fintech. but rather in, let's say, health tech. Or I know someone who moved to the shipping industry, like actual shipping industry, building models to optimize routes of ships to reduce carbon consumption, right? And to me, it's somewhere in between uh, play and then finding a small playground within the workspace, right? So could you say that actually there is a possibility of carving out a small playground where you're at ease, you're at comfort with uh, the play, and yet you're playing by the rules of the game. But then within those rules, you built a sub universe where you're actually playing.
Yes. So you be building your own ecosystem inside the larger ecosystem, right? Yeah. And especially if you work well and it's your scarce resource, you're given enough freedom
Yeah,
for you to design your own work and find your own meaning.
yeah,
But I'm still questioning about how about the bigger ecosystem within the whole society, right? So if you are happy to help the super tanker to consume less oil while carrying the oil,
yeah.
you're still part of feeding the oil industry and helping the society burn more oil, right?
But you could see this as, I mean, this could be a step towards, because if you go from one job to another, you're probably taking one step towards or one step closer towards what makes sense. So it could be an intermediate step that's still going towards so the question then remains, in order to find yourself playing rather than working, let's say in this definition, must one quit work, or can you actually find play within the work to some extent, to varying degrees? Or are you arguing that one must actually just quit the working system and restart or reimagine how they work, how they see work, or how they see what they call it?
I think we find play. Our human nature makes us find play everywhere. Even though as a child we play a lot, and then we're being taught not to play. But even if you get people in prison, they end up playing with whatever they have to kill time, right? So you can always find play in your environment. Um, it's just that to find meaning and purpose, you have to look at the big picture. To find play, you can look just at your narrow environment and not your own subsystem.
Okay, so then meaning and purpose are above work and play. Just play, like just being in an environment of play, is not enough. What you're arguing is not enough to find meaning and purpose. There is some element of creation, if I may add.
Yeah, your global narrative, having consciousness about the world we live in and how you see it, and where you want to drive it, and what you want to give to the future generation.
So is can I understand that there is an element of consumption and creation both in what you're saying? Or can you just, for example, let's say I spent the rest of my life learning, exploring the universe, understanding the universe, but I don't create anything. Or do you think that there needs to be some creation that accompanies consumption?
I the, so why I am convinced that play is in our inner nature and we all feel and want to play. I don't have a fixed opinion about creation. Or from my own experience, kind of natural stage as a kid, all the children they like to create, right? They're creating all the time. So again, I'm not a scientist, but I would tend to think that the human being we do feel this urge inside ourselves to
Create.
create. Yeah.
And and if you don't see it, would you say that there is something that has killed it? kill this urge.
Yeah, I would feel that if I see someone who is never creating at all, I would wonder if that person has been domesticated or have been taught and raised just to kill the inner child in them. And I don't want to maybe give lessons or tell them how they should think,
Yeah.
but I will try to seek in their life, in the narrative they have built for their own life and meaning, what what is still there in their child. So, and and I I just hope that it's not a big it doesn't hinder them to be happy, right? I wish everyone to be happy. Maybe happiness is something you cook inside yourself in your gut with the inputs you get from the outside world. And so I'm not gonna decide for others if they're happy or not. But if I imagine someone who's never engaging into the slightest creative act, so I would not be comfortable feeling responsible for that situation.
Understood. And then again, what to create is probably a very subjective experience. What they want to create for themselves. Would you count creating money as part of the so,
When you create, it has to be from nothing, right? So, yes, if you taking a white piece of paper and drawing banknotes, you would create money, and that would be creative.
Moving a bit further here, what's the role of collaboration in this work slash play? So you can create. Let's say that there is, without going too deep into it, there is some value, some intrinsic value in play and in creation. And here we are talking about play and creation in as opposed to work in the definition that we defined, right? What's the role of collaboration in play and creation versus, say, playing alone or creating alone? Why do we need other people, or do we need other people?
I I would not think there is a single answer to that. Um, there is this well-known distinction between people who are introvert and extrovert, right? The introvert finds energy in being alone, and an extrovert would find energy in being surrounded by others. So for the extrovert, collaboration is a way to just fuel themselves, right? It's like, okay, if I want to have more energy at the end of the day than in the morning when I wake up, I need to be surrounded by people. So if you are an extrovert, you would seek for that in cooperation, right? But there is other reasons to seek for cooperation and collaboration, such as my self-esteem. I would like to see gratitude in the eyes of people who surround me, because I need that to feed my ego, because for whatever reason, my childhood, my past, or the way I was raised, and the narrative I built about the world, my world view of the world I live in, I need that gratitude in the eyes of people surrounding me. So then that would be another way to fuel to drive me into a cooperative action.
Right.
When there are probably many others. I believe in God, and I want to be the power to go to heaven, and do it alone. Or I just want to uh, procreate, so I need to mate. And I want to fix what my ancestors have done.
Yeah.
And I cannot do it alone as well, but I feel responsible for it, because after all, I'm a descendant of the colonial times. So I would would not imagine, or maybe there is a code for the cause, the root cause of all these causes, but I don't see it. I think there'll be many reasons people are willing to collaborate.
And would you say, even for the, let's say, even for an introvert that prefers, actually finds energy from being alone,
Mhm.
um, I would imagine that the creation would have to interact with the world. Like you still need to absorb information from the world
Yeah.
and then put your information out in the world so then it fights, like your ideas fight with other ideas
Yeah.
in whichever form.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe that's also, maybe that's, yeah, maybe that's not purely collaboration, but then someone watching a piece of art that you've created and then making a comment on it is also in some form co-creation or collaboration because you're getting some feedback from the universe to on what you created, right?
Yeah.
So maybe even working solo could require actually will require ultimately some exposure out into the world. You cannot box yourself out, right?
Yeah.
Ex-
You're creating art is exposing yourself, it's showing your vulnerability.
Mm.
And I fundamentally believe that man is a social animal. So those connections we have with each other, with fellow humans, is a essential need of our being. There is a this common representation of the Maslow pyramid where you see like shelter at the bottom being very large, and then the food, and then the higher it goes, the needs are thinner, right?
Yeah.
But what turns out is Maslow did not depict the needs of humans as a pyramid. He just listed them,
Mm.
and I think we should rather see it as a time scale.
Mm.
If you don't drink for
Clear.
days, you die, right? If you don't eat for 3 months, you die.
Mm.
But if you are isolated for 3 years, maybe you become crazy and then you will die as
Yeah.
well because you cannot behave properly and you will
Yeah.
fall through the ravine from the mountain or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's just that the hierarchy between the needs is just some are get you killed in the short term, the other one will get you killed in the long term. So it will not have hot springs, right?
Maslow's urgency of needs, not
Yeah.
hierarchy of needs.
I see it as a time scale difference rather than importance. I you might argue that dying tomorrow is more important in some than dying in 1 year, but you might also argue that if in both cases you end up the same, there might be of equal importance.
Clear. Yeah, and also again, if you don't interact with the world, it's this question of if a tree fell in a forest and nobody heard of, did it really fall? That question lies on that. Like, so even if you created something beautiful, but um, the world never saw it, did
Yeah.
you really create it? Like, you know?
I don't think if you make a painting in your garage and then you burn it, you're not an artist. You become an artist at the second your creation is shown to the outside world, and at the second you're exposing yourself to being criticized.
Yeah.
That's why you become an artist. It's not when you paint. If you paint someone else, if you make a copy, like they do in China, when there are entire village who duplicate paintings of Mona Lisa for sale, those people they are maybe craftsmen, but they are not artists.
Yeah.
They're just copying. If it's ugly, they would say, I didn't do it. It's Leonardo.
Yeah.
Complain to Leonardo. I just copy the thing. Right? I'm not responsible. I'm not her. It doesn't make me cry or it doesn't make me sad when you say that this painting is ugly because I didn't do it. So you are an artist at the second where being criticized will hurt you. And it will hurt you because you put your guts and you're showing it to the whole world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in that sense, entrepreneurs are artists as well. They have something in their mind that doesn't exist. They argue that it should exist, they create it, and they are being exposed to being criticized by other people saying the project is bad for the world, it's crazy or whatever.
Yeah. Well, again, we could go into definitions of what you would call an entrepreneur and what you would not call an entrepreneur, because there's also factorization, factorification of entrepreneurship. I guess there's some tried and tested techniques that you need to follow to. There's like a formula of entrepreneurship, right? Which I guess there is craft more than art.
If you just
There is a
play by the book,
yeah,
and then when people try to criticize, you say, "I just did what the book said."
yeah.
Well, you're not an artist.
Um, yeah, which is also one of the reasons why business school didn't sit well with me because it felt like there is a formula, actually, no school sat well with me. I don't know why I spent so many years in education. I don't know if I learned something from it. um, okay. Then when two people collaborate with each other in a traditional work setting, in an employment setting, versus in a creation or play setting. What's the difference in the contract between these two people? Um, One working in an organization, in a company, in a job, as employer, employee, or colleagues, and another as co-creators, collaborators. So,
So the
what's the subtlety or what's the difference in the contract, nature of contract between these two people?
well, when you're in labor contract situation, the contract you don't look at until things go wrong. Right? And when things go wrong, you take the contract and you look at what it says. And if there is a compliance issue, then you will refer to a superior authority, a third party, right? That will arbitrate the majority. So that settings is not a two-party setting. It's a three-party setting. There's the employer, there's the employee, and there's the
Yeah,
government,
yeah,
right, who is going to settle any dispute. In the second situation, when you cooperate and you play, um, in a healthy play, everyone is totally sovereign, right, on their own free will.
mm,
And I do what I do because I want to do it. Therefore, I have nothing to, there's not no third party
mm,
to discriminate or to arbitrate unless you and me decide to choose that third party, which can happen. But it's not a written purpose.
mm. There is an implicit contract more than a.
Yeah, they are shared intention.
Mm. And is that always the case, or can there be some hidden, like how do you make in this setting of play rather than work? Like let's say you're creating something with someone, like we are creating something right now, which is a conversation, right? Um, how important is it to, because there is some beauty actually in not having a contract. There is also probably some risk in not having a contract, right? How important is it to make this contract explicit? Um, because I had this discussion with one of my friends recently about us actually connecting very well, and we spoke about just co-creating stuff together without any contract. And he asked me what the rule for accountability was between us.
Mm.
Said, okay, I'm willing to collaborate freely,
Mhm.
but can we be accountable, held accountable towards each other?
Mhm.
So let's say, like, where does accountability fall in this space of no contract or an implicit contract?
Um, well, you might want to have a paper contract. You might want to choose a situation where one will become the employer of the other, and still be in a play and free will situation. Because as much as we want to be two electrons to play together, we are still vast into an environment that requires us. For instance, if we want to put money in common, either we open a chest and we put cash or Bitcoin, Or we have to go to a bank, and if you want to go to a bank, they'll tell you, well, you need a legal entity, to drive you to have a legal entity, and then the government will come and say, you
Yeah.
need to pay tax, and for paying tax,
Yeah.
you need an employment contract, etc. So you might, although being into a play and civil situation, you might still end up with a legal contract and paperwork and long-term commitment that sound on that sound in contradiction with this idea of free will and freedom and self-sovereignty, um, unless you see you introduce the idea of commitment. Say, being on my own sovereignty and being on my freedom doesn't mean I cannot commit on the long term. And if I'm committed on the long term, I don't mind signing the paper, the contract.
But doesn't that turn this into a tripalium again?
It might. It might end up like this. Like because after some months, I'm losing. I'm disenchanted, right? I'm losing my interest, and I'm still tired because actually I thought I could sign this contract, and eventually, love vanished, and I want a divorce, and I realize I'm tied with the talk.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are couples who end up being married against their will,
Yeah.
and there are couples who, 40 years later, are still very happy and still feel very free and sovereign on their choice.
How do you avoid this? So let's say you start with claim, then at some point you have to put a contract on paper because you're interacting with the rest of the world. That's right. You have to bring the state on. How do you preserve the play in this situation, and how do you ensure that it doesn't become a tripalium? What's the what's the formula that is,
I'm not sure that it's from. I think it's
there's going to be one
the
day.
mindfulness exercise. You meditate. You look at yourself in the mirror every morning, and you're being honest with yourself about am I still in the game, or did I let me being dragged to a place I did not want to go? But it's a permanent questioning and re-questioning exercise, I believe.
So maybe a contract which has no barriers to exit, a contract that allows you to somehow allows you to walk away any day.
Yeah, but then
So the contract is applicable till the day you show up, but then you have a I don't know lowest possible friction to exit. Let's say maybe that's a contract that allows you to maintain a bit of display. Because on one hand, if you have some sort of a contract, I know that tomorrow you're going to show up, right? Which means I might take you for granted. Which means I might ask you to do things that you don't. I know you don't want to do, right? Um, or there might be one day when I show up when I really don't want to show up. Right? And the moment that happens, you're sort of deviating. Is beginning to deviate from the path of creativity or play.
but honestly, I think when it comes to personal one-to-one relationships, uh, I'm not sure paperwork can be that strong and can be stronger than your personal relationship.
So what's at risk is a personal relationship with
Yeah, and what would warrant the loyalty and the long-term solidarity, and no, it's always going to be the strength of bond. All those couple where he or she are mostly unfortunately she's beaten up by the husband uh, because he's having a psychological domination on her. It's crazy to believe, but it's their psychological domination that drives women to stay there while they are being beaten up. So the strength of psychological domination is underestimated, I think.
but it's still not a free contract then. It's not a free will, free contract per se.
Well, that's my point is to say that it's not the paper contract that
Yeah.
is the most dangerous
Right.
pitfall to
Right.
the loss of free will and freedom.
Right. Right.
And if you are in a small group, the what should be concerned is not what the contract says on the paper. What should be concerned is the relationship of mutual influence and mutual domination between between the two of you.
And sometimes even legal contracts break, right? Like even if you take a loan, you have the right to default.
Mhm.
You have the right to bankruptcy, I guess. So even a handshake or an implicit contract or explicit contract, circumstances change from one day to another that don't allow you to actually respect the contract. And I guess in this case, the only collateral is the relationship.
Yeah.
So you're going all in and saying, look, and I guess that's how trust also works because it's a bit of a leveraged activity that we do. So I leverage the trust between us, take some debt as against the trust that we have, and then
It grows the trust.
we grow the trust, and then we take larger debt, and of course one day we can default on this.
Yeah.
Mm. Okay. And so now maybe just coming to last couple of questions, because the conversation was more to understand both Opal team, and which you have been championing for several years now, and you run an organization in team, org structure, and also an open collective. So the concept is working as an open collective. The question I had was one, if you can shed light on the subtlety or the difference between running an organization in Opal and team versus having an open collective. So what are the differences? And second, what holds these organizations together? What's the binding force if it's not
I don't know what you mean by running an organization in team.
well, you've been advocating a team organization, and you've been championing it within your organization.
Yeah.
So in that context, I just want to understand the difference between um, um, Opal/team
Mhm.
and working in an open free collective like account set.
Yeah.
And second, in both of these formats, what's the contract that's bringing us, uh, that's making us show up? Let's say.
Um, there is so Team Opal is described as uh, stockpiling of several stages on the stage of consciousness. And you should see it as if team is a wrapper within within which, if you open it, you will see people cooperating. Inside this wrapper, you have the green layer, and then within the green layer, you have the orange layer. With the orange layer, so part of the one here, the red layer. Right. So teal is a form of agility that doesn't require to have pyramidal hierarchies and labor contract, but that is able to integrate them into forms of an acceptable form of production. Right? So, but of course, if you take a group of individuals, say 400 individuals, what do they have in common? They share the same purpose. They want to develop Vietnam and social entrepreneurship and sustainability and sharing knowledge. But within this 400, you find out that 300 are bound together by a written paper contract under the same jurisdiction, and then you will say, okay, within the 400, there is that cluster
Yeah.
that is very orange actually. So maybe their mindset, and maybe some of them are their free will, and even though they sign the contract, uh, but it is allowed to doubt. It is allowed to think that out of the 300, maybe only 10% of them are really in that self-sovereignty and free will mindset in the wholeness, and 90% of them are still working like a clockwork. Whereas the other 100 who do not have a contract cannot object. You cannot say, oh, they are not here on their free will because they have not signed the contract, right? So it guarantees a more it guarantees more the free will and the freedom of the individual, right? Which is a good way to try to build a very team environment with a lower chunk of orange inside or lower chunk of green inside, right? But it's interesting that you notice that uh, even though there are no contract within these 100 people, when there is one project that arrives, let's make a festival or let's organize this or that. Then until someone takes leadership on it, nothing happens. And when that person takes a leadership, then there is a kind of pyramidal form shape that appears
Yes.
between the various participants. They segment the work, right? They break down the structure of the work, and people get affected to areas, and they recruit for their own areas. People as well. So even though there are no paper contract, you can still have a section of time and space where they are organized in a pretty orange way, actually.
Yeah.
But as soon as the project is done, it dismantles.
And the new formation could be very different from the previous formation.
The 100 who do not have a contract will have a more chill and more organic, we talk about biomimicry, mimicking life in the way they cooperate with each other. On the other hand, they don't cooperate with each other 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, because they have their own business as well. Right? They are not 100% committed and living on the 40%. So yeah, people instead you don't have in France we have only 100 people and they are part time, but they have the ability to be purely free, and therefore they can protect their sovereignty and their free will. Whereas in Vietnam, there are 300 people, part of the same tribe, sharing the same purpose, but then they have contracts. They show up every day to get a salary, and so the fraction of their time that they're spending on free will, compared to the fraction of their time they are spending because they're committed on the long term. They're spending in a more pyramidal structure organization. It's not negligible. Right?
And is that the goal to reach the
For mankind,
subsistence? No, for the subsistence, like in your organization, like such.
not anywhere in the short term. I mean, we have to adapt with. It depends on how you.
Is there a
Your question is okay. You have it's integrated, right? It's like a body and we have organs, right? So as a whole body, being still leaves room for specific organs to be green or to be orange,
Understood.
right?
But these 300 people, as you said, their contract is different from the other 100 who are more in free will and how they spend their time, in
Yeah.
which form of organization, etc. The question is that would that be a goal for those 300 to eventually also grow towards being freer, towards being more
I
independent?
um, I used to have that goal, but then I realized it was if they don't want to go there,
Yeah.
I'd be coercive
Yeah.
and forcing them to go where they don't want to go.
Mm.
So what I care about now is that I don't block people who want to move towards
Mm.
green or teal.
So there is a path.
That yeah, the past exists, and I cannot be blamed for keeping people in fear or working like machines and without any purpose.
Yeah.
That's my concept. But I appreciate our world. The world we're living is 80% orange, and I understand that we all have a need to comply and to be
Maybe.
normal and to fit in. Because we want to get married and to some standard, and we
Yeah.
want to show up nice, and it's a it's a great dilemma for in the book in Lenin, the book from Sheryl Sandberg. She explains that uh, you can be a very successful businesswoman, but that reduce your attractiveness. So
Okay.
at the moment you have to choose,
Mm.
right?
Okay.
It's very sad,
Mm.
but it's just what the numbers show. So um, I don't want to force people into being very teal if they want to stay orange,
Mm.
but I don't want to blame
Mm.
for forcing people to stay into orange or red,
Yeah.
right, being managed by fear. But I do realize that 30% every time 90% of the new hires have been growing and raised into a very vertical environment.
Right.
That's what they consider being serious business or good behavior. And I it's like I don't share that view, but I don't blame them for having this view. I'm not their father
Yeah.
to tell them what's good and what's bad. And they will grow up and they will grow older like I did. They will read more books and maybe they will join my opinion, but maybe not. Maybe they will grow differently. I don't know.
And do you see your posture as being neutral, or do you see your posture as being a facilitator or a catalyst towards the?
I make explicit efforts to convert and convince people.
Okay, so more an evangelist.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
but there are ethics in the evangelist job, right? And I don't want to force people, right? I want to do it ethically, and that people choose my church on their own will, not because I brainwash them, or not because I'm hooking them with money or with project, or any dishonest way of recruiting for my church.
Yeah.
It's more important to have people who truly believe, even if there is a lower number of them.
Mm.
There's only a lot of people who just bluntly lie to make me happy because I'm buying their vote.
And maybe if you can just very briefly touch upon Ocean Collective format.
Open Collective, the platform.
Yeah, no, an open collective, the format of an open collective where every day you show up is 100% voluntary. What's the, so in particular, speaking of the concept,
Yes.
what's the purpose that people show up?
Um, Well, everyone is showing up for their own purpose, right? And, but by shedding light on every individual purpose, some people feel they fit better in, and some people don't feel they belong too much, and eventually create some coherence with a core set of causes that are more or less being shared by everyone. Right? And so you, as an individual, decide if you fit into the collective by relatively looking at the other people in the collective, right? So it's instead of defining a company in French, we say a boîte. I work in a box. That's how we say in French. Which is defined by its borders, right?
There used to be a law that said there have to be compartments between.
So many square meters per individual.
No, like if you sit in an office,
Yeah.
there needs to be a wall between you and the next person. There's some law that existed until very recently that said that you need to separate. I should not be able to look at what the other person is doing. So yeah, I'll come back to this, but I know very little about this.
Yeah. I'm not surprised. So, so most organizations, be they a company or an NGO, non-profit, right? That they are seen as a box, meaning you define a strong border, no, right? You sign your labor contract, you win. You don't sign your. We see these borders are fading more and more. Like in the big companies now, you see a mix of external consultant, kind of mix up with the employees, although they are not allowed to have the same email address, so that everybody knows they're from outside, etc. So the border gets blurred, but we still draw a lot of attention about defining the border. An open collective is not defined by its border, it's defined by its center. We have the purpose, the pole, the why, that's like a giant open fire, right? And people can come to warm themselves close to the fire, or not so close to the fire. You choose your own distance from the center, and but there is no one that there's no line drawn that okay, once we pass this line, you're in. You know, it's just that the closer you are, the more heat you get, and the further you are from the fire, the less heat you get, and that's it. Uh, there are people who are so close that they can touch the treasure chest with where the money dedicated to serving the public. But again, the open collective, the way defined is by its center, not by its form.
Clear. So I'll ask you two last questions, and these will be with no follow-up questions in the interest of time. So I'll ask you a question, and then it's a free. You can freely take your time to answer. One, speaking of the center, right? Because the idea of a true open collective where people are truly coming freely out of their own will, right? Sure, has to imply that at some point several such collectives with different centers should freely merge into one another, flow into one another, right?
Yeah.
Which makes me believe that it's like the universe is it's a perfect universe. So at uh, any point in the universe, and look into all directions, it looks like the universe looks the same, right? Which means that there is no center of the universe. At each point, you could define a new center of the universe, and that's how I've been imagining a collective of collectives, which smoothly flows from one into another. I might actually participate 50% of my time in one, 20 in another, 10 different degrees of. And at the end of the day, I guess in this sense, the only center that you're truly at is yourself. Right? So you're sitting on your own private chest. Uh, and then there is some other collective center of few people. So there are multiple centers, right? So just your thoughts on this to start with. Where how does how does cross pollination of such collectives look like? One in theory or in philosophy, and two in practicality, because there is for the council, there is a space, physical space where we do show up, which means that by being here and not being somewhere else, and also in parallel in a digital space. What does a free flowing forum look like where you could actually navigate from one dimension to another and be part of multiple centers? Yes, your thoughts on this?
You describe it pretty well when you say, okay, what is scarcity time? Cannot lose time. I have 24 hours in the day. I can use my time to do things for me, but I cannot steal my time like it's 24 hours. Now you have to.
Yeah.
So my decision for a day is to decide how much I will allocate to being a member of this collective or being a member of another collective. The more I am drawn to the collective, I'm closer to the center, to the open center, and then closer to the chest. And I will therefore spend more time and win more projects with this collective than my compared to my secondary collective, to whom I still belong, the one and then third one. Um, I do not try to run into statistics about how much I think one person can spend on which collectives. There is also a very subjective aspect to the collective because there is one should not see one collective like one company, right? If two legal entities pursue the same purpose, they are not competitors.
Yeah.
They share the same purpose, right?
Yeah.
So their chest is at the bottom of next to the same fire.
Yeah.
Um, and so then it boils down to my my subjective, my present moment. How do I there is a how do I see and how much in detail both. No, there is a like a Russian doll phenomenon on the purpose, right? There is the higher purpose that's all men should be equal, and then there's a purpose within that, which is called men and women, and with men and women, there's a sub purpose about black women in France, and just subject to that. So, I joined a tribe that's over equal right for some time, but after 3 or 5 years, I find this is not accurate enough and radical enough, and because my own true calling is not about equality in general, but specifically about women gender equality and and fairness to women, then I would find a sub-collective or another collective. So they're not located in states. I don't know if it's a collective within a collective or if it's a different fire somewhere else, But with time, I definitely mature my worldview and ready and decide to move from one chest to another chest based on my own priority. And when you become a parent, I think you care more about the future generation than before. Being the same person with the same core value.
And would you say that even though you initiated the concept, I'm correct in assuming you initiated the concept, right?
I was in collective actually.
Sorry?
We were in a collective called Medical Worker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And even if you're the initiator of the concept, would you then actually admit that your center is not the center of the concept? There is a part of your center at the center of the concept. There's parts of you which are also around other centers which are outside of the.
Yeah. Being a good father is very important to me, and
Yeah.
it's not on displayed on the purpose of developing in Vietnam is also very important to me. It's because I share, but it got diluted in the whole group. And now, if you look at our graphic representation, our board, it doesn't show up anymore. So
So
And
those
I
initiatives
have my
continue,
own.
but they will be in another center. They would have
Hmm?
some.
And so I'm not guarding a fire or any kind.
Yeah. No, just wanted to understand, like, can you be at home even in collective that you started? I guess not, because at the end of the day, the only place where you're going to be at home is like in you
Yeah.
and not in. Okay. And last question, something that we discussed during our first conversation, uh, which is Slack. So, in order to achieve uh, this liberty, free, format, etc., you speak about evangelizing. So, yes, maybe there's some amount of mental conditioning or way of thinking, perspective that needs to change when you be open to being, let's say, free. But there is also some amount of slack because you might have constraints that enforce you into being in a certain format of work or whatever, right? And what is your opinion on Slack? So we discussed this briefly a few months ago. But how do you arrive at this ideal asymptotic situation where every day you're creating out of free will, your free will, but you don't have Slack? In the absence of Slack, how do you generate this Slack? Or can you actually arrive at this in the absence of Slack?
Um, Prove me wrong, but I think the stack always exists, but we don't always see it. A lot of people complain they have no Slack. Actually, they do. Or they don't because deliberately their manager is trying to keep them out, right?
Mhm.
And then they should act on that and just leave. But if you're in a healthy work condition where your manager believes in you, you do have some slack. But we have been conditioned to believe we don't.
Right.
There's so many times I talk to people being employees and give a random idea about something they could do, and they just open their eyes like crazy and say, "Oh, you think I can do that? Do you think I can say that?" When? Where is it forbidden?
Yeah.
Correct. It's not forbidden. You never thought of it. There's so many things you never thought about.
But in an organization, yes. But in general, I mean, I agree with the statement to the extent that so many people have Slack, but they don't see it. But I guess not all people, right? So there is some amount of privilege or access to resources or whatever that might, or life constraints that you inherit
Yeah.
might mean that you don't have Slack. But um, then in the context of an organization, I'm guessing what you're trying to say is within most organizations, there is some sort of Slack.
If there is not, that means your boss is trying to fire you, and you should act on it and leave because
Or it's an
someone is,
exploitative organization and
and then you should leave.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, where most IT companies in India tend to hear um, very friendly workplace, but at the end of the day, they're still exploiting somehow. But not leaving a lot of
You, if you don't, if the game is made for you to lose, don't play that game. Play another game.
uh, but then again, Slack comes in the form where maybe you don't have enough opportunities, maybe you don't have good quality education to choose your opportunities. Um, so as an evangelist of Gopal, as an evangelist, would that be a part of your, let's say, curriculum or onboarding process where you help people identify Slack that exists but they are not aware of it, or build Slack with the resources that they have around them, or give them Slack for those who absolutely don't have Slack, provide them with some Slack.
Um, what I attach myself is to create the psychological safety.
Mm.
When people think they don't have Slack, mostly they censor themselves. So what I care about is to create that a culture of open debate or self, I was about to say integrity, but instead we say wholeness, letting people be themselves and speak freely and openly, and that is what is going to give them some slack, right? Because they will be able to imagine different world, what if
Yeah.
scenario. Then, okay, how about this? How about that?
Yeah.
It is by expressing those alternative scenario, which are dream, so they're communicating that way. And there is a common perception, a common wisdom that says if dreams cannot be realized, they are useless, they are pointless, and don't share them. I strongly disagree. I think that you should express your dreams, even if you can see how they can be achieved. Uh, Most likely they will never be achieved, but maybe someone can help you. Maybe someone will not get you achieving your dream, but will tell you how to do something else that will fulfill your dream at the same extent, right? And he will, or maybe he will. So I believe it starts with open debate, and open debate starts with psychological safety, the ability to show up in vulnerability, the ability to show up true to yourself and take the risk of being criticized because people are not gonna kill you by criticizing you. They're just going to say what they think themselves because free speech is for everyone.
But just as a thought experiment, if I push this to the extreme, if I say there's someone in Vietnam who didn't have the opportunity to go to a good school, did not educate themselves, and hence can't present themselves to you, uh, but then listens to your evangelical speech, gets inspired, comes to you, so where do I start?
Mm-hmm. Well,
How? Because today I don't have the skills to get a job. I don't have uh, enough slack to then be free to have wholeness, let's say. What's the starting point?
well, the starting point is to come to the event and to discuss and join the Facebook group and see if you can launch a pro bono project on your free time, or just connect with the other people, and maybe afterwards, people inside the company will say, okay, we know that you're part of the family. It makes sense for us to pay your friends,
Hmm.
right? And we are
So show up with whatever you have.
yeah.
Uh,
Let's create bond together.
and then at some point people will actually help you upscale, help you whatever to generate Slack
For who you are.
Yeah. Okay. Very clear. Interesting. So we went just above 1 hour. We can pause here. I think I exhausted all the questions I had.
Yeah,
All
sure.
the questions I had. Excellent. If you have any parting notes to add to this.
Well, thank you very much. I hope the sound quality will be on par.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll have to shoot to record this once again.
So as long as at least one person heard it,
It's what
something
it
was created, right? Which is,
exactly.
I heard you and you heard me, so something was created. I guess.
Thank you so much.